And of course, now's the time for our Reverend Cherie. And I just want to say I was at her ordination 2 weeks ago. The people at this church in Olathe that she's been part of were just filled with so much love for her. And they kept coming up and saying, "You are so lucky to have her." And it was beautiful to see her rededication of Graham and her relationship also part of that. So, this morning, Reverend Cherie will share her thoughts on God acquitted of charges. I'm just going to leave it at that. You can tell us. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Green Spirit. Beautiful song. And really in the ethos of what we are about here at Unity of Lawrence. So it's a really nice setup. I came to this talk a little while ago, and it's about our concept, our preconceived ideas about God. And so I'll begin. I'm setting the stage that you are the courtroom, and I address you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, God is on trial today through no fault of its own. You see, God is being charged as an accomplice to hate crimes. The thinking behind these charges is that if God is omniscience and omnipotence, all-knowing and all-power, then surely God must either be an accessory or an accomplice to these crimes. All one has to do is turn on the news or surf the internet. It seems there are numerous instances of one group claiming supremacy over another group. And the one who sees itself as dominant spews venomous words of hatred to those who believe differently. They collude for the extermination of those who may have a different religion than theirs, or whose skin may be a different color. They blame and alienate those who love differently. And each time a group expresses their malevolence, they claim God told them to behave this way, or they're only following God's laws. Now, it's very easy for us to point fingers and go, well, you know what, they're just uncivilized. They're not really spiritual. They're not educated. And then we look here at KU's campus, where there are black students who are outcrying systemic racism that they are experiencing. Now, I'm thinking, we're very civilized, mostly spiritual, and highly educated here in Lawrence. And yet, adverse treatment of those who are deemed different than mainstream society exists. It's an attitude of non-inclusion, non-acceptance. And by deeming people as different, there's a collective consciousness that says they are worth less. They are not really of value. Now, this is not some foreign country or a religious sect touting hate. More than likely, these are Christians who are in a position of power, but still blame and disparage those who look differently than they do. And then that brings us here to our spiritual home. We may walk around feeling a little smug. We're above that. We're no longer in that sphere of existence. And we even tout that unity strives for inclusion and acceptance of all people. And yet, isms exist in unity. And when I say the word ism, I am talking about the label that we place on people that demeans them, that does not honor the divinity within them. So things like ageism, right? Either being too young or too old to have full power or knowledge. Elitism, genderism, sizeism, and my favorite, non-positivism. You know what I'm talking about, right? We see people who do not either behave or believe the way that we think a unity practitioner should be, and we tend to blame and shame them. And heaven forbid someone is coming from a place of lack consciousness, because then we tend to marginalize them. You know, they're not with the program. So these are the isms that I'm talking about here. Have you ever had the thought, oh my God, if she would just stop with the woes and get with it? Then, you know, there's a really strong possibility that you're struggling with isms. Have you ever had the thought, if they would just say this, be this, do this, they'd be okay? Then there's a strong possibility, once again, you're struggling with isms. Have you ever had the thought, if they would just let go of their fear, let go of their ego, let go of their attachment to victimhood, stop with the woo-woo Christianity thing or the crystals or the channeling, then there is really a strong possibility that you are struggling with isms. I got to tell you, I have to look at my own isms. You know, I think, oh, I've done all this therapy, all this spiritual work, all this seminary stuff. I'm good. I got this. Until I'm walking or hearing or seeing something, and there goes that thought. There goes that judgment. Isms are insidious because our false self likes to do a lot of comparison to others. It's how we define our worth. And if someone is more than or less than us, then that kind of gives us a marker on that measuring stick. And so I got to tell you, I'll give you a recent experience of me dealing with my own isms. I have a really good friend. She's brilliant, she's well educated. And for the first year of our relationship, I knew the answer to her problem was she just needed to get a real job. That's all, right? She would frequently talk about lack of money, lack of being able to do things, lack of a social life, lack of friends, lack of purpose. Well, I can help you. I'm a minister, and I was going to be minister at the time. So, you know, I did the spiritual counseling, I did the job coaching, I did the mentoring. And then, you know, I'm in there and I'm digging with her as she's working through these problems, and I all of a sudden I got to this, oh, I'm in the ism. I am labeling her as not doing it right. I am labeling her as less than a unity practitioner. Holy wow. So I'm in this dirt, and now, you know, I'm getting resentment because obviously she's not following the plan I'm thinking she should be following, right? So I'm in there and I'm digging and I'm like frustrated and I'm getting resentment. Did she ask me to dig? No, I volunteered, right? And then I come to thinking that we cannot solve the problem on that same plane that that person is on. Albert Einstein had this great quote. He said that we cannot solve problems in the same thinking that they were created. And that's what I was doing. That's what I was doing. So I stopped. And I remembered what I am. Divinity. Christ consciousness within here. So my job was to love her. support her, listen to her, and allow her to find the answers within her own wisdom. Within her own wisdom. I keep saying over and over again that, right? I don't have the answers. So I'm really not surprised by this charge against God, because look at the way that our mind works and the way that we think. So these charges really come from our fear and our powerlessness as we kind of grapple with the error manifestation that is in our world right now. And it seems that God is a good target. So that's why I am a witness for God's defense, of course, and a unity minister. So I am here to refute those charges against God and convince you of its innocence. The problem comes through our need to define God in a particular way. It's in the definition that we create the illusion that a crime has been perpetrated. Did you hear me? It's through our definition that we create the illusion of a crime perpetrated by God. Because if we define God as a supreme being who has control over our lives and our destinies, then wouldn't we be waiting to be saved by this supreme being? And so in this belief system, the best case scenario is that God, as Superman, would swoop in and stop those things that we deem as bad from happening to us. And when God does not stop the hatred and the violence, well, we're quick to throw some shade over there, some blame on God for not doing what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to do. Right? But what if in mankind's need to define the undefinable and the unknowable, we have created an error in what God is? Did you hear me? We may have created an error in what God is. What if God is the unlimited energy of love, of life, of light? Well, then would we, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, still be waiting to be saved? Or would we embrace our responsibility for saving ourselves and our brothers and sisters? Would we be responsible for saving ourselves and our brothers and sisters? Emily Cady is one of our early writers in our movement, and I just love her work. Some of it's a little archaic, but when you really dig, it's just powerful stuff. And she chimes in about clarifying what God is. In her book, Lessons in Truth, she writes this: "It is through Christ, the indwelling Christ, that we are to receive all that God has and is, as much or as little as we can or dare to claim. There is in our own indwelling all the life and health, all the strength and peace and joy, all the wisdom and support that you can ever need or desire." That's powerful stuff. What she's saying is, she's saying that we are each born with our own divine consciousness, God in us. And we incarnate to remember the truth of what we are and to evolve. Our physical bodies are basically vehicles that exist to support our consciousness. And the most important thing that we learn is that we are all connected. We are all connected through our divinity, through our spiritual essence. They were singing about one. We are all one. Now, of course, in this understanding is that we have choices. We can choose to grow in consciousness, or we can choose to stay asleep to the truth of what we are, divinity. Many of us choose not to awaken to this truth. And it's in humanity's choice to stay asleep that atrocities can happen. Did you hear me? Okay. It's in humanity's choice to stay asleep that atrocities can happen. When we forget our truth and embrace fear, our thoughts become consumed by lack and separation, and we in turn manifest error and hatred in the world. This is all about us. So this brings me to where my conviction lies. I am convicted in facilitating the awakening of the indwelling Christ, the indwelling divinity in each person. Because I believe by doing this work, people will then move from a need to blame God or someone else to understanding that we are all of God and therefore deserve to be treated with love and with dignity. So here I am, your minister. My function is to hold the knowing of that truth, to allow you to connect to your indwelling divinity, and then connect to each other. And then as members of this community, we are here to assist each other. Did you hear me? We are here to assist each other from releasing the judgment and moving to discernment, in releasing the anger and the hatred and moving to love, in releasing the personalities and moving to compassion for each other. That's why we are in community. Not because I like to stand up here and talk. No, this is why we're in community. It's an action. It's an action that we are taking with each other. So how do we do this? We do this by beholding the divinity in each person as we walk our talk. And how does that look? It looks like when a congregant is struggling with emotions or lack or whatever else, that we behold their truth. We hold that knowing that what is being seen on the outside is not what's the truth. We hold that. We listen. We love them. We support them. And then we give them a blessing to raise them up as they move on. That is how we walk this talk. So, as a unity minister, my foundation is a Christian foundation, which means that I follow the teachings of Jesus' ministries. It doesn't mean that it's better than any other. It doesn't mean that any other path is not acceptable. All is good. It just means this is the particular path and route that I go to. In unity, it means that we follow the precept that Jesus talked about in Mark chapter 12, verses 30 and 31. And it's written, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength." The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other greater commandment than these. If we believe that God is within, then really what that's talking about is that we need to love ourselves in totality. We need to love ourselves in totality. And that means that whatever we do, whatever we say, whatever we are, comes from that place of love. And the second part of that is that we are in loving service to each other, led by Spirit. Nothing else. There are no other rules. I think those are pretty good rules. I almost said something. Pretty good rules. You know, I talked about my mouth. All right. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I encourage you to acquit God of these charges. These charges are coming from our fears and our error beliefs. If you find God guilty, then really you're finding yourself guilty. So I encourage you to remember your truth, remember your divinity, remember your connection to Source, remember your connection to each other. And from that awareness, you can only find God innocent of these charges. So I ask you to claim your divine inheritance, and together, let's create a world that works for all. So I thank you. Thank you for listening. So what I wanted to do was formally introduce my husband, Graham. I know some of you have seen him around, and it's like, who is he? Are they connected? What's the deal? So he's my husband, my partner, my friend, my biggest cheerleader, and I've just really been blessed by his presence. So I wanted to say two things to you. Thank you for your warm welcome of him and including him. I also want to ask you two little things. One, allow him to determine what is his to do. Just because you're my ministry doesn't mean that you're his ministry. So he has the choice to make on, does he want to be involved here or not? And either way is okay because he has his own path. Okay, so we are together, but we have separate identities and separate journeys. And the second thing is, we don't talk about church when we're out of here. So if you want to tell your minister something, you better be coming talking to me. Don't be talking to him. All right? Come directly to me.
And of course, everybody's asking us, what's our life story?
It's short.
It's 12 years. We will be married 12 years this summer, and it's been an awesome ride. My name is Graham Taylor Jones. The rather long and official sounding surname is because Cherie's family of origin is the Taylor clan, and mine is the Joneses. When we got married, we decided to mash both of our names together. So we are both Taylor Jones. Much to my dad's chagrin.
True.
It's been a wonderful ride. Back in 2003, we met whilst I was on vacation in Florida. We did the transatlantic relationship for about 18 months. And then I moved in with her in Florida, and I never left. I never wanted to leave. We got married, and since then, we've done Florida, the UK for 3 years, back to Florida, Kansas City, Unity Seminary, and now Lawrence. And I'm really, really grateful for your warm welcome to me, to Cherie, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.